What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Friday, everybody. I just came from the Doomer Friday on the night shift with Clint, Dan, and Sander. Sander is about to release his latest Dreamland Motel episode. If you guys don't know what Dreamland Motel is, first of all, what the hell are you doing? To me, and this is just a personal opinion, it's the best new channel about UFOs that you can encounter. It has a very novel idea, niche idea. I don't know if you guys know about those channels on YouTube that are lo-fi, sort of like ambient music that takes you to sleep. Well, this is the same concept, but applied to UFOs and with Sanders' voice. And he's doing a fantastic job. It's not even a month and a half since he opened the channel, and he already crossed 10,000 subscribers. I think he's at 11 or 12,000 right now. Something weird has happened over the last 48 hours that we need to talk about. The presidential cabinet is starting to say things that are making people really curious, because it's not just the Epstein stuff that is happening. People like Tulsi Gabbard, who is the director of national intelligence, or people like JD Vance, who is the vice president of the United States, are coming out with statements that are very, very surprising and for some confusing, because initially, from the past administration, nobody from the cabinet wanted to talk about these topics so candidly. And it's not just about UFOs, although it is kind of related to UFOs as well. Last year, when I spoke to Danny Sheehan, I asked him a question about Operation Mockingbird. To those who don't know, back in the 70s, when Watergate was uncovered, there was an operation called Mockingbird that was also uncovered that explained how intelligence agencies used agents to infiltrate mainstream media outlets. And they discovered that all of them were infiltrated. And they claimed that Operation Mockingbird stopped. But given how the climate is right now in many topics, not just UFOs, any conspiracy theory that you can think of, I think that Operation Mockingbird might be still around. And something that really surprised me was something that happened today. And it reminded me of that conversation I had with Sheehan and this question I asked him. So here it is. I think Operation Mockingbird, for example, didn't actually end and they just changed the name. What do you do when that comes to you? How do you identify what's misinformation and disinformation?
Well, that's a great question, but they did not stop the Project Mockingbird. The fact that it got revealed, and that they during the church committee hearings back in 75 and 76, at that time they identified 42 specific, deeply embedded CIA national security people inside the major media, and that there's still those kind of people there. They have them now as their national security reporters. They call them that. They've got an official name for them, and that gives them liaison into the national security information, so that they can get good sources. But the cost of that compromise is that they agree not to reveal certain kind of things. So they're participating in maintaining the national security state.
If that sounds familiar, is because a lot of the people involved in the UFO movement always talk about national security, the Americans. After that, what happened today was really interesting to me because of what Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, was just asked yesterday by Benny Johnson on his podcast. And I got to show you guys because this is really interesting. And just listen to the entire exchange. I know that some of the conversation is going to get political because of Tulsi and how divided the country is, but please try to look at the information and what Tulsi is saying. And then I'm going to show you another clip from JD Vance directly talking about UFOs. So here's Tulsi first.
The media being used as a propaganda mechanism. We saw it flatly. I mean, I think it's the smoking gun, quite frankly. of the Obamagate narrative and the Russiagate narrative, that it was so baked in that the New York Times and Washington Post went and ran with it. Some would say that that's part of Operation Mockingbird. Some would say that that's part of what we learned in the Church Committee, that the intel agencies were using media outlets as their mouthpieces, and that those mouthpieces would parrot the official narrative. And I wanted to ask you, is this operation still going on? Are you aware of the intel agencies working directly with media outlets in order to push prescribed narratives that may or may not be true?
Before Tulsi answers, this doesn't just apply to politics, as Benny wants to ask the question. That's the way he framed it. It definitely applies to UFOs as well. And it has applied to UFOs always. And Tulsi even has stated that she wants to find out what's going on with UFOs. They call them UAP now, but she has stated that before. And that's the Director of National Intelligence. So keep that in mind and listen to Tulsi's answer.
It's something that we've already had to deal with, Benny, within this administration, where there are people within the intelligence community who believe that their will is more important than the will of the American people, and will weaponize intelligence by leaking it to their friends within the mainstream media with the intent of undermining President Trump's agenda. It is not one that he hasn't already talked about in every rally and town hall that he did throughout the campaign. I don't even know how many there were, but President Trump is enacting the very thing he promised the American people he would do in this election. So people in the intelligence community, they may agree, they may disagree. That's not the point here. As intelligence professionals, as people who work in the national security space, in the intelligence community, they are required to fulfill their mandate to their oath to the Constitution of the United States, and to the President of the United States, who was duly elected by the American people. Those who leak intelligence to their friends in the mainstream media with the intent of undermining the president who was elected by the American people, none of these intelligence professionals were. They are subverting the will of the people and therefore undermining the Constitution.
It's wild.
The CIA only works for the president, not for the Constitution. And I'm sure that many other intelligence agencies may be the same. I don't know, but the CIA, I've heard multiple CIA officers saying that the CIA only works for the president, not for the Constitution. Let's keep that clear.
That you're still having to deal with that. Call it what you will, but Operation Mockingbird, just incredible that they were just out with it, that they were using the media as government organs to push propaganda, and it's still happening today.
This is why what we're doing is so important, Benny,
Yes.
and this is why President Trump's mandate in this is really critical, is by exposing the truth, by exposing the bad actors within the intelligence community and in the political space who are weaponizing intelligence to advance their own political interests, is so important to be able to turn the light on in places that have been dark for far too long, expose the truth, and drive accountability. That's the only way that we can actually shift this and begin the work to try to restore trust in the intelligence community.
What if some of these dark places have the names of people within your cabinet? Are you going to protect those people too? And it goes both ways, though, because I think the entire political system in the US is rotten to the core. I know that there's a lot of idealistic people and even politicians that are just starting, that start out thinking they're going to serve the people and they're going to uphold the Constitution. And if they get involved in the intelligence agencies, or even those politicians get involved with intel officers, that changes over time. The priorities change over time, and a lot of them see a level of corruption and bad actors that they eventually, some of them, not all of them, become part of the system. And if they don't become part of the system, they stay quiet. The best example of this is probably Bernie Sanders, because he stayed quiet a couple of times too. Right now, he's very vocal about what he thinks is happening, but you get my drift. Because note, that Benny Johnson mentioned Operation Mockingbird twice, and Gabbard didn't correct him in any way. She didn't say the name herself. Danny Sheehan told me that probably the name is not the same anymore. I would be inclined to believe that as well. But those attempts at subverting reality and subverting the truth are also happening in the UFO community and have happened for decades. And this, for example, the latest example is the Wall Street Journal article, which only told one side of the story. It didn't tell both sides. The people who wrote the article went to all sources, but some of those sources were ignored. Their story was not told as they intended it to. That seems like manipulation, and that seems like something that an operation like this would do. Now, how has, and this is just a thought experiment that I was talking about on Doomer Friday earlier, how has, if this is true, if Project Mockingbird is still alive and well since the 70s, how do you guys think it would evolve over time? Because it is at its core a counterintelligence operation directed at the media. And after the internet was created and it became public access, the new media these days is not the mainstream media. That's not where the numbers are really. The numbers and the influence is in social media. And what would be a better way to infiltrate media in this day and age? It would be to infiltrate social media companies. And I think that's one of the other ways in which I would operate if I was Mockingbird and I was still running. That's one thing I would do. Another thing I would do is to get science communicators, people who are like loyal to the established narrative, to use their influence to peddle this information through their influence and through their platforms. And this could also be happening if this Operation Mockingbird is still running, as Benny suggested, and as Tulsi Gabbard did not deny, because she didn't. She kind of confirmed it, but not directly. And another aspect, this already started before social media, but now I think it's way more complex and way more difficult to get to know who's who, because another way to use this operation would be to infiltrate the UFO community, as somebody like, for example, Rick Doty did back in the day, who's from AFOSI. Today, and in this space, I've been nearly 2 years now here. The people that I am more weary of and doubtful of are UFO researchers themselves, that some of them are not just that. And they appear to be, they claim they are. Some of them even openly claim that UFOs are real, and yet they do other things that just confuse people about what they really do. That, I think, is happening too. The UFO community is also infiltrated. It has always been that way, and it's really difficult to know who's who has a different agenda than just trying to find out what's going on. You got to develop a sharp eye to get to know what's going on with that, and who's who, and who's tricking you and who's not. It's really, really, really difficult. I am confused about a lot of people in the UFO community, and I mean, I treat everybody with respect. I always do, or try to do, and I will give anybody the benefit of the doubt, but I will always be just looking, watching what they do, not just what they tell me when they interact with me. And I guess that comes from the media analysis background that I have. If I was Operation Mockingbird, I would be doing it kind of like that. And yeah, infiltrate all media and all communities involved with these topics. And I just don't know how high it goes, because, and I'm just going to show you this right now, because another person from the cabinet also made a really wild statement today. And that person is Vice President J.D. Vance, who was just on a podcast called Ruthless podcast. He talked about footage of drones, and he said this about UFOs that I think you guys will find really interesting and just make you think how far this operation, if it's still running, how far it goes, how high does it go? I don't know, but listen to this.
The other thing is there are stories that I am particularly focused on, in part just because you talk with your buddies about it. Like, I'm obsessed with the whole UFO thing. What's actually going on? What were those videos all about? What's actually happening? I haven't gotten to the bottom of it yet, but we're only 6 months in. We've been very busy. That's actually the August recess is in part me going to try to dive to the bottom of the whole UFO thing from last year. So
I mean, you got to have us back.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Like,
I'll let you know.
That's very interesting. And yeah, August recess is coming. I think I'm gonna talk to Matt Laszlo soon because we need to talk about everything that he's been doing right there in Congress. But JD Vance seems to be interested in this. I think that pretty much every UFO-oriented news outlet has reported on this. Shout out to UAP James for clipping this. I want to hear your thoughts on what you think about this, about what JD Vance is saying. Do you think he's going to be blocked or stonewalled, or do you think he might really get to the bottom, or do you think he's part of this operation that Tulsi Gabbard talks about? Just asking questions, but I found this really interesting. Over less than 24 hours, 2 people from the presidential cabinet came out to talk about what many think are conspiracy theories. Operation Mockingbird still being active, and UFOs, and the Director of National Intelligence and the Vice President of the United States. This is pretty significant. I want to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think Operation Mockingbird was ended back then, or do you think it's still out there? And what do you think about my thought experiment? What would you change? What would you add? How would you operate if you were Project Mockingbird still running? And what do you think about these statements? Do you think JD Vance is going to get to the bottom of this by the end of August? Doubtful, but maybe he will. Let me know. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to help us, and it is what helps us the most. So thank you. But if you want to support the channel in other ways, there's a few links down there you can choose from. You can become a member on YouTube, or you can support us through KGRA. Every interview I've done so far is on the KGRA platforms, every platform. So check those out too. And that's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive like Benny Johnson, who asked a really good question. Always. Bye.